booming.
I think given that a lot of, especially international tourists, will be booking some activities online, possibly even before they come, it's quite common to book or pay a portion of your accommodation before you arrive, or certainly before you leave home, or before you leave the last country. So you know where you're staying for 1 or 2 nights. You know, it sort of depends whether you're at the backpacker end and you take your chances, or you're a bit more organised.
Well, I'm asking, we've never had a true indication of what our visitors' numbers are, because it's measured on all sorts of things, you know, camps.
It's just really expensive, to put a big, checkpoint Charlie at each end of the district and stop every car and ask them, how much have you got on you? How much is in your bank account? What's on your credit card? And then check all that information as they leave the district. I mean, you can do it. Egypt used to. It's really expensive.
Egypt did, huh?
Yeah.
Thank you, Helen.
Councillor Williams?
Yes, three points and questions. The first one, just apropos of Councillor Henderson's comment on level of satisfaction with key relationships. This did come through quite strongly, both formally and informally, in the submission process. But I would suggest that probably when we look reviewing governance and inter-governance relationships, we wouldn't actually look at an independent survey form. I think it's really more a matter of us getting our heads together, and Taupo certainly was one that said that our relationship was at a very low point. So hopefully we can address some of those issues moving forward. The second one was just a question for Ms McLeod. The Lake Taupo flood and erosion strategy, is that going to be worked in with in time for the for the public to perhaps, and the council to perhaps have some input into the resource consent process, the upcoming resource consent process with Mighty River Power and electric generators? And the third question is just an explanation, please, on pages 10.41 and 10.42 on whether the issues regarding the Kinloch wastewater discharge have been addressed, and secondly the 36 wastewater overflows that had occurred on page 10.42.
So there's 2 questions there.
Yeah.
The flood and erosion strategy question. There's a separation, obviously, between the work that we're doing in relation to the flood and erosion strategy, the resource consent that Waikato Regional Council will be reviewing is a separate issue to our flood and erosion strategy. Now, as I understand it, we've had a letter from the Waikato Regional Council asking us for our views in relation to the review of the resource consent that is coming up. We'll be coming back to you at the June meeting with a suggested reply to that letter. But I understand that the review period for that resource consent is around April next year. April. That's where it's supposed to begin. So they're taking on board people's views and looking forward to that review period as to the extent and scope and nature.
Ms McLeod, just like to point out that Friends of Lake Taupo, and they are a significant group of people, have requested that some work be done on the maximum allowable level under the resource consent with regards to hydro generation, and I guess that also must be looked at as part of the flood and erosion strategy. So I just would like to know that there's going to be some cohesion between looking at these, because I think we're not, as a council, we're not trying to vilify or point fingers at any particular stakeholders in this, but we also have to be mindful that there has been some allegations made about lake levels going into the so-called weather bond season being at a maximum, and should those be reviewed? So I guess all that should be. You say they're two separate issues, but actually they are, the strategy will have perhaps an impact on the thinking of this council going forward into the review of those resource consents.
Okay, I think I understand your question now, because it's not quite clear. The flood and erosion strategy already exists. That was passed by council, 2 years ago? 2009. Falling out of that is a piece of work which is around our district plan, which was currently being scoped at the moment, and that will also come back to you in June in terms of the scope of that work, which is, but alongside that, the Waikato Regional Council also has to review the resource consent for Mairua Power, which obviously has a relationship with the lake levels.
So I guess the question is, what are we going to do as part of that, or are we leaving it up to Waikato Regional Council?
We will be bringing some suggestions to you in terms of what goes forward to the Waikato Regional Council as to comments on their suggested review process. That's what I was alluding to in the first comment that I made.
Well, as I understand it, as Mayor, you gave us an unquantified mandate to push Waikato Regional Council to do the review, because it's a bit like a warrant of fitness, I suppose. There is a window next year around about April, don't argue over a month, that they could do the review. Now, I've already had a letter from Mr. Buckley refusing to do it, and screeds of reasons why, from A to Z, for the want of a better word. Mr. Williams also wrote, and he's been rebutted. We also wrote, and we tried to get, is it Genesis? What's the one down your river down there, Gary, coming into Kuritown? Genesis. We tried to get theirs reviewed. We've been rebutted. But as Councillor Williams pointed out, the Friends of Lake Taupo, Johnny Bell and a few of those guys have got a big groundswell, or I'll call it another word, a big bow wave going now. And they're coming to present to you in August or something like that. And they're very, very keen and active in trying to push Waikato Regional Council to do the review. And I would go so far as to say that I think they're making headway, but they certainly haven't made the decision to do it yet. Councillor Henderson?
Just a question to Ms McLeod. It might be a good time perhaps to give a brief explanation of what is allowed to be done and not done under the scope of the review.
Yeah, well, I'm actually going to turn to Mr. Green on that because I can recall parts of that, but he can probably give a much more succinct answer.
I'd like to leave most of that answer till next month, actually, when the letter comes up. But other than to say that the flood and erosion strategy, which this council adopted, as did Waikato Regional Council adopt, talks about reviewing the Mighty River Power consents in terms of lake levels.
Talk about reviewing those lake levels in terms of being sustainable, in terms of natural and physical resources under the Resource Management Act, etc., or not specifically?
It doesn't go into that detail, but I suggest we probably leave the rest of this discussion until next month when we have the letter.
Through the chair, if I may, the last week's In the Loop was supposed to have explanation about what the criteria for the review were, and I'm pretty sure from memory that actually if you just go back to your last week's In the Loop, we'd prepared some material and put that in there for you.
Yeah. Councillor Williams?
Sorry? The third question was, the second question was around whether or not those excess discharges had been addressed in Kinloch and on the wastewater system, page 10.42.
I can't comment on the Kinloch. As far as that milestone of no wastewater overflows, I think that's a pure world. I think there's a subset of that there shouldn't be any wastewater overflows into the river or lake. We tick that box, but controlling wastewater overflows per se is an aim, but it's a pretty far-reaching goal.
So do you think that should be reviewed? That
We will review it, yes, next year.
Councillor Hickling?
I just can't let this opportunity go on transportation. There has been a steady decrease in the number of crashes on our roads over the past 4 or 5 years. I know that the 2011-12 is only up to December, but that is quite a decrease. On the other side, I do know that the fatalities, unfortunately, will be up on last year's. But I think I made those comments with regards to our LTP and the comments about transportation in that document. And I think it should reflect possibly these figures as opposed to what's in the LTP.
Yes, I remember last year we got all the way to August without a fatality. All the way to August without a fatality. You think about it. And then what did we end up with the year before? 34 or something. Massive.
Not a fatality, no.
What did we have here just on the weekend gone? We've had one on the ETA. The whole ETA was closed when I come home on Sunday night.
Yeah.
Closed off. It must have been a big smash. And how are these two cyclists from Kinloch?
One's very serious, and the other one's not going to be so bad. The woman is really serious. Whole spine is sort of smashed up.
Councillor Williams?
sorry, just I omitted part of the question. The other non-compliance was the Waitanui wastewater discharge consistently exceeds the total nitrogen 90% percentile values of the consent limit. So these were just these were just two, Kinloch and Waitanui, where the issues it doesn't state they've been addressed. So just really the question is what's being done to mitigate the effects of those excess discharges.
We'll look into that and report back.
Thank you.
Okay, anything further from anybody? Councillor Hickling?
Well, no, it's just a comment with Keith just mentioning those two cyclists on Poepi Road. And I just can't quite remember. We did knock something out of Poepi Road on our capital. But was that the widening or was that the cycle?
I've had a meeting with Dennis. The widening is still a priority over the.
And that will perhaps overcome some of the problems with the cyclists.
Enough to do 3K in the next 4 years. That's not going to make much difference, and it's all going to depend on subsidy. I'm going to Wellington tomorrow to see about NZTA, just to see what we have to do to get their subsidy.
Okay.
Just while we're on that subject, what happened about the safety on that Turangi Bridge, putting up a fence like they did in Wakatani or something? What happened about that? I think the board members didn't your board members have a meeting with Harry? Harry.
We have signalled that it is important, but nothing essentially has happened yet.
Oh, has he, Gareth?
There's a corridor study has been undertaken, which includes that area to look at all the safety issues and what the solutions are. So NZTA are doing that currently.
Well, I don't profess to be a rocket scientist, but a young boy at Wakatani was jumping off the bridge into the river and stepped back, and a car ran him over. And within a week, they had a fence up. Have you seen that fence on that bridge going into Wakatani?
Seen the fence.
It's the same design as the Turangi one. So what's so hard about this?
The issue with the Turangi bridge is that it apparently technically doesn't allow it to happen from the size of the bridge and the width, etc. of that road. The problem would be that it would. NZTA's engineering opinion is that it would be more dangerous to put a fence up similar to that Whakatane one. So the corridor study is instead of that is looking at the whole stretch of road and seeing what else could happen. Whether it could be an engineering solution such as that, it could be a new bridge, it could be a speed limit change, it could be a whole raft of different things. So that's been undertaken.
Well, if it won't be a new bridge, Councillor Anderson.
I was curious, when did NZTA come to the conclusion that you've just told us about in terms of not being appropriate to put that solution on the bridge? Was that an old
They mentioned that at your workshop that you had in
They
2 days.
did.
They did.
So they're exploring other solutions